For over 20 years now. Good. I always forget that part. Sorry, Jeff. For over 20 years now, my mother has been writing letters to a former coworker and dear friend. Sometimes it is written on plain notebook paper, and sometimes on fancy stationery that contains notes in the margins such as, "Isn't this one pretty? I knew I had to save it and send it to you." These letters have become their ritual of connection, their way of staying engaged in one another's lives, the place where they share both the daily happenings and also where they mark the larger moments of great significance, moments of joy, deep loss, the birth of grandchildren, the death of spouses, siblings, friends. When I began to reflect on resistance and how we resist our growing edges, the words of the civil rights leader and theologian Howard Thurman came to mind. And I realized that what I really wanted to do, needed to do maybe, was follow the lead of my mom and her friend and write you all a letter. So here it is. Dear friends, our recent years have been filled with ambiguity and unknowing. We found ourselves caught between the hope of returning to one another and the pieces of life that we missed and the uncertainty of what is to come. I have begun to realize that this dance of return and unknowing is one that we will be in for some time to come. I've been thinking quite a bit about Howard Thurman's concept of the growing edge. I wonder if you know this one. Look well to the growing edge, he says. All around us, worlds are dying and new worlds are being born. All around us, life is dying and life is being born. The fruit ripens on the tree. The roots are silently at work in the darkness of the earth against a time when there shall be new leaves, fresh blossoms, green fruit. Such is the growing edge. It is the extra breath from the exhausted lung. The one more thing to try when all else has failed. The upward reach of life when weariness closes in upon all endeavor. This is the basis of hope in moments of despair, the incentive to carry on, the source of confidence when worlds crash and dreams whiten into ash. We would do well then to look to the growing edge. It seems to me that most of our days are lived on the growing edge, in this place that is an endless dance of shadow and light, hope and grief. When we are on the growing edge, the veil of normal life is lifted, many times against our will, and we need to cobble together a new life from the pieces. I've been watching you from afar, first joining you on Zoom and then again in person. And what I have seen in the past few years is you living on the growing edge. And I have seen how your hearts are being shaped in the process. The growing edge causes us to question our decisions, our next steps. And this makes sense because growing edges are places that frighten us. Times when we take risks, when we question whether or not we are enough to do this hard thing. This is not a comfortable place. Yet Thurman asks us to have courage because growth is happening whether we see it or not. I have seen you find strength you didn't know you had. Hold a belief fiercer than you ever could have imagined, and discover a love deeper than you had ever known. Growing edges can be places of despair, and yet they hold so much possibility for new life. Did I ever tell you about the teacher I had in college who used to yell from the front of the room, "Ask what's possible, not what's wrong"? His name was Dr. Tancredi, and he was not one you would ever forget. It was an abnormal psychology course, and we entered every day expecting to learn about diagnoses and how to treat ailments of all sorts. He would tell us a story about a person and their struggles. We were to talk through how we would treat them. Out would come the DSM-4, and we would begin looking up all of the names that we would use to describe what was wrong. And after we did this, he would yell, "And now you have a human being in front of you who did not come to see you for a diagnosis. They came for hope. If you just tell them what's wrong, you leave them in despair. Work with them to discover what's possible, and you give them new life. Anyone can tell them what's wrong." I haven't thought about him and that question in a long time, and I suddenly appreciate his reframe more than ever. It would be a good conversation to have next time we talk. What is it that seems possible for you? Where are you finding hope? Tell me that. We already have a list of so many things that are wrong. In fact, we have long lists of all that is wrong in the larger world as well. I recently listened to Krista Tippett interview the Zen priest, Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. And in that interview, she said, there is something dying in our society, in our culture, and there's something dying in us individually. And what is dying, I think, is the willingness to be in denial. And that is extraordinary. It's always been happening, but when it happens in enough of us in a short period of time at the same time, then you have a tipping point and the culture can begin to shift. It begins when we all realize that we have to face it. We have to see it all. We cannot have a healed society, she said. We cannot have change. We cannot have justice if we do not reclaim and repair the human spirit. We need to come to a deep knowing of who we are. That is how you bring down systems of oppression. Those systems can't survive if enough of us set about the work of reclaiming the human spirit, because in that work, we reclaim the sense of humanity for all people. A deep knowing, she tells us, of who we are is the beginning of how we heal the world. We can no longer live in denial. It's a bold statement. I wonder how that statement resonates with you. In some ways, it feels like an incredibly overwhelming concept, and I have no idea where to begin. And then I think about it a bit more, and I hear in my head just one word: stay. Just stay. Stay here with me in this uncomfortable place as we try to uncover who we are. How many teachers have I heard over the years say that spiritual practice is all about learning how to stay, to stop trying to outrun suffering, to stop using all of our faculties to simply avoid pain and discomfort at all costs, and instead turn our hearts to seeing what is here, to seeing all of life, all of its flawed abundance. What an absolutely terrifying idea. Sitting with the pain and feeling all of it. Who in their right mind wants to do such a thing? And yet I know, and you do too, that the fear we don't acknowledge is still there, waiting for a moment to appear. And when it does, it can make us small, can make us shrink, can block the excitement of a new thing, can keep us from uncovering deep gladness. What kind of transformation might await us if we stop trying to outrun suffering and instead learn how to stay? How would this open us up to embracing possibility, to seeing what can be, who we can be, when we risk opening ourselves up to all that life brings our way? I know what you're thinking. Simple to say, hard to do. And you're right. This life is very complicated, and I never told you any of it would be easy. Now, you know it wouldn't be a letter from me if I didn't include a poem or two. So I found this one the other day, and it seems to just fit. It's by the UU minister Lynn Unger, and it's called Breathe. Breathe, said the wind. How can I breathe at a time like this, when the air is full of the smoke of burning tires and burning lives? Just breathe, the wind insisted. Easy for you to say. The weight of injustice is not wrapped around your throat, cutting off all air. I need you to breathe. Don't tell me to be calm when there are so many reasons to be angry, so much cause for despair. I didn't say to be calm, said the wind. I said to breathe. We're going to need a lot of air to make this hurricane together. Friends, how do we feel the fear and see the pain and sense the hope here on this edge and do what needs to be done anyway? So I wanted to tell you a story I heard just a week or so ago from a colleague. She was adopted at a very young age, never knew her biological mother. A few years ago, the age of 54, she went in search of her mother and learned that she had just passed away. In her search, she discovered someone who was her mother's friend in their school years, and they struck up a correspondence, writing each other letters. In the last letter, her friend wrote, "Your mother struggled so much in her life. Her days were hard, and she tried to protect herself from the pain as much as she could. I will always remember the way she held her body. Her body was always curved around her heart. She was literally protecting her heart from anything that could come her way. It kept her safe in some ways, but it kept her turned away. It kept her closed. What I hope for you, the lesson I would give you from your mom, is that you learn how to unfurl, that you open, not curved around your heart, but taking the risk to be open, be vulnerable, not knowing what is to come, but whatever it is, greet it with open arms." As I'm sitting at home writing you this letter, I find that I'm seeing your faces in my mind. I realize how much, for me, the strength I need to do this work, to live on the growing edge, uncovering who I am, is grounded in knowing that I belong. I belong here in this larger faith that we share, with communities spread around the country, and here with all of you. And you do too. We gather certain of only one thing, that we're human, knowing we contain multitudes and contradictions, complex beings with the power to harm and to heal, with a fierce belief in the magic that can happen when we come together. It's a mix of forgiveness, love, wonder, and a whole lot of grace. It doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always work. We stumble and we come back together again with all the courage we can muster. The creation of community is really a remarkable thing. A place where we are welcomed in all our flawed abundance, and held in love as we work at being human, at finding our growing edges, where others support us as we face the things that scare us, and will remind us again and again that we are not alone. So this is getting to be quite the long letter, and I promise I'm going to wrap it up very soon. But one more poem, though, before I do, and this one from David White. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way to begin the conversation. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. To hear another's voice, follow your own. Wait until that voice becomes an intimate, private ear that can then really listen to another. Start right now. Take a small step you call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake the other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing close in, the step you don't want to take. So in the days ahead, if the shadows are strong and you question whether or not you can continue on this path of uncovering who you are, living on your growing edge, facing the fear and learning to stay. Just stay and remember to start close in. Don't think too far down the road. Listen for your own voice and take one small step. And remember, here you belong. Here we know that you are made of heartbreak and joy. You are tragedy and triumph. You are grit and grace. And you are enough. You carry the stars and the galaxies within you. Rest, breathe, hold your people close. And remember, whatever comes, you are and always will be so very much enough. In love and with gratitude, Kelly. So we've got 2 discussion questions that I'm going to introduce for you for our social time. What supports you in staying on the growing edge? And are there places in your life where you can see what's possible and not what's wrong?
So please stand in body or spirit and join